There is one man who stands out from everyone else in the Yukon, where gold fever shakes mountain towns and the clang of heavy machinery can be heard across frozen rivers. Tony Beets, the grumpy Dutch miner whose larger-than-life personality made Gold Rush's most memorable moments possible, has built up a fortune as big as the land he lives on. But how did a skinny Texel teen become the king of Klondike gold? What does a modern-day gold baron do when they enjoy the finer things in life, away from the loud sluice boxes and tall dredges? In this in-depth look, we'll look at Tony's meteoric rise, the luxurious life he's built from yellow metal, and the private luxuries that are hidden behind the rough exterior of his placer mining empire. Anton Beets was born in 1959 on the small Dutch island of Texel. He came to Canada during his teenage years to start a new life. He got work on different mining crews with just a strong work ethic and a strong belief in the value of raw materials. Tony had to sleep in insulated tents in the cold northern nights and ate freeze-dried meals and instant coffee to stay alive. But even in those early years, he stood out because of how well he knew machines and rocks. When experienced miners slid heavy equipment across icy creeks, Tony saw chances, hidden pay streaks, river benches that hadn't been tested yet, and the chance to try out risky digging methods. When he was 19, he bought his first small claim near Dawson City with borrowed money that he wasn't sure he would be able to pay back. Yet, after a few months, he found a rich vein and paid off his debts. He even had enough gold left over to buy a small bulldozer. After that, Tony's path looked a lot like the compound growth curves he taught on camera later. Every summer, he put the money he made back into buying bigger and better dredges and yarder systems. In the late 1990s, he owned several claims in the Klondike area, and a local rumor said that he moved more gold each season than whole rival crews. But Tony wasn't just known for his machines, he was also known for having unmatched confidence in dangerous situations. Others would leave when water levels rose or weather warnings came out, but he would set up pumps to keep things going, weld steel liners to sluice boxes to make them stronger, and change the shape of dredge pontoons to make them stronger against jagged ice flows. People were amazed at how willing he was to take risks with engineering solutions, putting six-figure sums of money on seals that hadn't been tested in custom-built dredge chutes. He didn't get rich by luck, he did it by being bold and skilled at the same time. When Tony's annual earnings went over $2 million, he started to like things other than the mining camp. He turned an old riverboat from the gold rush era that had been abandoned into a floating lounge with mahogany walls, brass fixtures with engravings, and a small bar with aged scotches. Whenever he needed a break from all the hard work, he would invite his loyal crew members and famous people, from popular reality shows, to sip single malts in the soft light of Edison bulb sconces. There was a change with that floating men's club. No longer was mining just a way to get rich, it was the basis for a lifestyle that was so fancy it could compete with any penthouse in the city. Back on land, Tony bought a mansion by the river that was filled with luxurious features that fit his bold personality. The vaulted great room had a fireplace made from local quartz that was carved on both sides. On the western wall, there was a custom gun rack with old flintlocks and new rifles on display, which was a nod to both his heritage and his frontier roots. His kitchen had commercial-grade appliances that could roast whole caribous. It also had a hidden wine cellar carved into the permafrost that kept Bordeaux and Napa vintages at 55 degrees all year. A detached garage nearby held a collection of high-end cars, including Range Rovers, a blacked-out Hummer H2, and sometimes a shiny classic Cadillac Eldorado for Sunday drives along the Klondike Highway. Tony's casual clothes hinted at his hidden wealth. He liked made-to-measure wool pants and European leather boots, which were practical for backcountry travel but stylish enough to stand out. He wore worn-out flannel shirts and insulated jackets under them. The polished bezel of his heavyweight Swiss chronograph often sparkled in the snow on his wrist. It was an ironic luxury for a man whose motto used to be always spend on the drill, not the wristwatch. But as Tony's wealth grew, he learned to value craftsmanship in areas other than mining tools. Today, that expensive watch is both a statement and a status symbol. It reminds him that he overcame one of the toughest environments in the world through sheer determination and earned the right to enjoy the finer things in life. Even though there are big houses and old cars, Tony's heart beats fastest in the mine. As the ice melts in the spring, he personally oversees the assembly of the dredge by welding pontoons, aligning sluice riffles, and setting up high-pressure monitors. Watching him walk across the gravel with rocks all over it while barking orders into a two-way radio shows how the rich and the poor come together, how living a lavish life and working hard all the time are two sides of the same Klondike coin. As we go on, we'll reveal more layers, from the champagne bottles he pops after record-setting holidays to the family vacations on tropical islands that happen at the end of each season. We'll talk about the way he spends his money, like why a man who was born in 11 below zero weather throws summer parties, and how Tony Beets strikes a balance between having money and enjoying it. One thing becomes clear: Tony's most interesting story is not written in ounces of gold, but in the rich tapestry of a life lived big and risky on his own terms. Tony Beets lives at full speed from the moment the drill head breaks through the permafrost in the spring until the last sluice box is shut down for the season. But when he leaves the claim, he lives in a world of refined extravagance that most people would never imagine coming from 18-hour Arctic workdays. His home by the river is both a trophy and a sanctuary, and there are touches of luxury in every part of it. One of the most important parts is the private airstrip he cut out of the bush 20 miles outside of Dawson City. Tony owns a twin-engine Cessna and flies it himself, while other miners depend on hired flights or bush pilots. Under the northern sun, the sleek aluminum wings shine, and the custom-made burgundy suede seats in the cockpit show that he likes to turn workhorses into flying showstoppers. He taxis the plane down the gravel runway, the roar of the propellers cutting through the cool morning air. The plane lands next to his hangar, which is a steel-covered cathedral that holds the Cessna, a Cherokee 6, and a de Havilland Beaver floatplane that has been lovingly restored. Each plane has Tony's unique orange and black stripes, which are both a sign of ownership and pride in taking over the skies as easily as he takes over gold fields. Tony pays just as much attention to detail inside the hangar as he does when he's working on the sluice box. Along the walls are tool cabinets, and each drawer is labeled in neat handwriting and holds only metric sockets, precision calipers, and aerospace-grade fasteners. But tucked away among the wrenches and spare parts are some unexpectedly high-class items, such as a humidor with a glass front that's filled with Cuban Cohiba Bihike cigars and a custom minibar made from old railway ties that has crystal decanters of Macallan 25-year and Yamazaki 18-year whiskeys. On certain Sundays, Tony invites his closest friends to get together under the spill of fluorescent lights to drink rare single malts and talk about where the strategic dredge placements for next season will be made. It's a stark contrast to see rough machinery next to handmade cigars and high-end spirits, but for Tony, it's just the natural balance of sweat and taste. Tony's garage, which now has motors instead of machines, is another example of his unique mix of function and style. He takes care of a stable of custom snowmobiles, which are Arctic Cat CTZ2S that have been changed to have alloy track frames and shock absorbers that have been tuned for fast runs through powder fields. Each sled is painted in his signature colors and has his initials on it, which makes every winter commute feel like a private Grand Prix. Tony does get some alone time from time to time by driving his 1971 Chevrolet Camaro RS, a muscle car he brought back from the US and carefully fixed up in his shop. He drives up the frozen river road with a V8 rumble that fills the yard. The gearshifts can be heard against the pine forests. The inside of the car is lined with black leather with orange stitching, which is a subtle nod to his favorite color scheme, orange. There is also a modern infotainment system that is discreetly built in to keep the car's historical accuracy. When it comes to socializing, Tony's areas for parties are on par with those of wealthy city magnates. His guesthouse on stilts above the turquoise water of the lake is a weekend getaway for investors, TV producers, and sometimes famous people. There are floor-to-ceiling windows that open up to a view of Yukon's wild beauty. Inside, there are 2 hand-chiseled fireplaces made of Cloyne granite and 2 plush sectional sofas. 12 people can sit at a long walnut table under a custom chandelier made from recycled sluice rackets and quarry glass. In the middle of July, Tony holds fancy black-tie dinners here, pairing fresh Arctic char with burgundy pinots that are flown in quickly. Waiters flown in from Vancouver serve delicate pastries as a tribute to his early life in Europe, and between courses, fiddlers from the area play lively reels. In the guesthouse, the bathrooms have steam showers and heated slate floors, which are big pluses when it's cold outside. There are even high-end toiletries, like a carefully chosen assortment of L'Occitane Alpine caviar extracts and hand-poured beeswax candles made from his own apiary on a bench by the water. Off-property, Tony's charitable work includes giving money to indigenous scholarship funds and search and rescue equipment. Still, there is an air of giving in quiet indulgence. When the last dredge is put away for the winter and the fall, he goes to a private lodge on Vancouver Island. Tony trades in his insulated canvas jacket for custom-made cashmere sweaters and goes hunting for blacktail deer on the slopes of the coast. The lodge's great hall, which is made of Douglas fir beams, has a collection of trophy antlers and maritime artifacts. The veranda next to it has a view of a calm cove where his 38-foot Nordic tug is waiting for fishing trips. Even though Tony is very rich, he sticks to a very strict routine during these vacations: coffee on the deck at dawn, silent driftboat casts at salmon streams, and evenings spent with close friends enjoying fine cigars and rare wines. These retreats give him new energy and reinforce his belief that simple living and wild nature go hand in hand for a man whose success came from having both grit and vision. Even the clothes he keeps in his closet are a story of balanced contrasts. Most of his work clothes are still heavy-duty, like insulated Carhartt bibs, steel-toed boots, and insulated parkas. But behind the scenes, he keeps racks of high-end designer labels. Think V-neck cashmere sweaters by Loro Piana, tailored wool coats by Zegna, and leather jackets by Santilli. He wears simple gold cufflinks with pickaxe designs with clean cotton shirts from Milan. This combines the world of custom tailoring with the basic needs of placer mining. And for his few public appearances on talk shows or at gala fundraisers, he wears tuxedos made of midnight blue mohair, showing a level of versatility that not many reality TV stars can pull off. The private airstrip, the custom hangar, the exotic cars, the lakeside retreats, the high-end wardrobes, and the charitable work all come together to paint a picture of Tony Beets that goes beyond the stereotypical image of a roughneck miner. The way he builds his dredges is a reflection of the way he builds his life. Extravagance is both a reward and proof that he has one. Even with all of these nice things, it's his unwavering work ethic and desire for new challenges that make him who he is. In the next section, we'll look at how Tony's personal relationships and family life affect his lavish lifestyle, showing how even the richest empires are held together by human bonds. Behind the smooth exterior of business partnerships and old cars, Tony Beets' most treasured possessions are the private moments he spends with his family. From breakfasts in his kitchen made of quartz in the morning to late-night planning sessions in his Cessna hangar, his family is always a part of his worlds of luxury and business. Lisa, his wife of more than 30 years, moved to the Yukon from Europe a long time before their lives were shown on TV. She is both an emotional anchor and a logistical coordinator, managing housekeepers, choosing invitations to galas, and making sure that their 4 kids get a balanced upbringing no matter what the seasons require. Their oldest son, Bram, worked as an apprentice on the dredge with Tony. He learned how to control pressure and perfect welds and sluice alignment. At the same time, Sarah and Nico, the twins, found other things they loved to do besides mining. Sarah became a landscape photographer who loved taking pictures of Yukon sunsets, and Nico became a junior pilot who loved flying the Cherokee 6 with his father. Lila, Tony's youngest daughter, likes to dance, which is very different from sluice boxes. However, Tony goes to recitals with the same focus he puts on sluice calibration. On the weekends, people gather at the Riverside compound to pass on traditions. Tony has to have crepes every Sunday morning. The kids make the batter at home and whisk it together to please Grandpa. The excitement of dredge assembly is very different from these breakfasts. One minute you can smell maple syrup and the next you can hear an engine roar as a pump comes to life. These polar experiences can be had together on family trips on the refurbished riverboat. On deck, kids work on their reels while Tony and his brothers argue about hydraulic pressures below. Later, Lisa holds small dinners for a few people in the mahogany lounge of the boat, where she serves wild Yukon salmon and presa wines and reminds everyone that the best way to celebrate gold yields is to strengthen family ties. Tony is known for being very dramatic, but he fiercely protects his kids' privacy. When the production team suggests a family episode, he talks about the rules. Photographers can take pictures of groups of people and kids proudly waving nugget-encrusted coins, but they can't catch siblings fighting or late-night worries about seasonal school closures. Setting limits shows that he cares about private matters, which is different from many reality stars whose families become public property all the time. By doing this, he makes a clear separation between the public show and the safe places where he feels supported, making sure that every moment on screen shows respect instead of exploitation. It's just as important to Tony's story how he gets along with his siblings. His brothers handle claims together and split the money they make. They know all the engineering terms used to describe each new hydraulic pump and turbine. They disagree with Tony's plans and suggest riskier routes or deeper tapping for tailing. There are heated arguments, just like in any family business, but at the end of each season, there is a quiet ceremony where an engraved pickaxe is given from one generation to the next. Tony stands stiffly with his hand on the handle of his father's heirloom while his nephews and nieces form a circle around him. That picture came to represent his way of life, new ideas rooted in tradition. It was also used on engraved invitation cards sent to mining partners, which combine personal pride with stability at work. During quiet times, Tony builds traditions that show both wealth and modesty. On the winter solstice, he holds a circle with cocoa and stories in the great room by the river. People gather around Cloane's granite hearths as he talks about his childhood memories of the flat farmlands of Texel and the rumbling sound of the Yukon's spring melt. On these nights, designer tweed jackets are swapped out for cozy sweaters, and drinking glasses in the guesthouse are swapped out for simple mugs of hot chocolate with spices. Family stories turn into oral archives that combine tales from European peasants with stories from people who lived on the frontier. When these events happen, they serve as living contrasts and remind everyone that Tony's empire is built on shared heritage and community warmth, despite its glitzy reputation. The Beets family's calendar looks like a mix of mining schedules and high-class social plans. Search and rescue helicopter fundraisers happen every so often, and dredge maintenance marathons happen every so often. Children's dance recitals and industry galas are happening at the same time, and next season's claim evaluations will happen at the same time as charity auctions. Lisa, on the other hand, makes sure that each responsibility gets the attention it deserves. At their family airstrip, she throws themed gala luncheons and looks for charitable guests at the back of the Cessna. People are amazed as they land on the gravel runways and are greeted by staff serving caviar canapes and golden brown mini blinis. It's like a taste of high-class city life in the middle of nowhere. These orchestrations show how Tony's style is always a mix of hard work and well-earned pleasure. Family vacations add another layer to Beets' beautiful tapestry. After each season of dredging, they go back to their villas, which have marble floors and infinity pools instead of permafrost and sluice beds. Dawn sees kids swimming while Tony does Taoist Tai Chi on terraces with views of the water. People always talk about sluice efficiencies, which shows that work and play can go hand in hand. In those sunny villas, the Beets family enjoys a different rhythm from the Yukon's constant demands. Picture a house in the Mediterranean that is perched on a cliff, with vines growing up the terracotta walls and the scent of jasmine floating on the warm sea breezes. Here, Sarah takes pictures of the sunrise every Thursday afternoon while Bram looks in nearby olive groves for rare varieties that Tony can use in his experiments with infused oils. Around the property's infinity pool, Nico teaches local waters while showing off the fine control he learned flying his beechcraft over frozen rivers. Meanwhile, Lila's dance troupe puts on impromptu shows on a terrace covered in marble tiles. Tony, whose silhouette is often drawn against metal sluice boxes, takes off his leather work gloves and wears linen sleeves instead. He then spends the mornings tasting local prosciutto and talking about how different microclimates affect grape tannins. These retreats help him teach a lesson that he says a lot: the best harvests in life come from doing things that aren't your main job, like growing grapes or mining gold. In the evening, Tony plans a sunset yacht trip along the coast. The Golden Horizon, a 75-foot motor yacht, is very different from the steel dredges that work in the Yukon rivers. Glazed teak decks shine, and Art Deco lanterns make champagne flutes clink. The family sails through hidden coves and gets off the boat on remote beaches where crabs are roasted over open fires and toasts are made to honor the day's harvest. Tony talks about unlocking new claims and the next prototype of the dredge while laughing, and the salty air kisses his face. He does this to remind everyone that for him, adventure and business go hand in hand. Even with all of their wealth, the Beets family's charitable work stays true to the land that made them rich. Tony holds a charity gala called Gold for Good every summer on his bluff above the Yukon River. Overhead lights made of crystals hang from canvas tents, and dignitaries, local indigenous leaders, and mining regulators sit at tables covered in white linen. Customized items are sold at live auctions, such as a small replica dredge carved from driftwood by local artists, a dinner under the northern lights prepared by chefs trained by Michelin, and one-on-one flight lessons with Tony in his Cessna. The money raised goes toward scholarships for indigenous students going to school for engineering or aviation, maintenance on search and rescue helicopters, and climate research on permafrost melt. The after-party for the gala takes place on the remodeled riverboat, where shiny brass fixtures reflect smiles lit by flickering candles. Tony frames these events as acts of stewardship, not showiness, because he knows that people with money have a duty to care for both the community and the environment. Giving in the winter is different from giving in the summer. Tony's compound turns into a relief hub when the temperature drops below -40 degrees Fahrenheit. He hires semi-trucks to bring insulated clothing, high-calorie food, and portable generators to remote cabin communities whose supply lines are often cut off by ice storms. He then sends his own team to those communities. He works with local officials and search and rescue teams to get to remote homesteads using his own fleet of beaver floatplanes. Many people see pictures of Tony giving out kerosene heaters or care packages, which changes his public image from a tough prospector to a kind protector of the North. People's reactions on social media show how different the two situations are. The same hands that weld sluice boxes now feed and warm families in need, even when government aid arrives too late. In addition to big events, the Beets family keeps up smaller traditions of giving. During harvest time, they hold community dredge days where young people from the area can tour active claims while being supervised. Teenagers put on helmets and learn how sluice riffles catch gold. They also listen to Bram, who talks about slurry dynamics with all the passion of a professor. At the end of the day, Tony gives each participant a small nugget set on a keychain as a reminder of their goals and possibilities. By taking the mystery out of his job, he sparks interest and plants the seeds for the next generation of engineers, geologists, and pilots who may one day do even better than he did. These charitable projects do two things: they fuel Tony's personal mission and support the story he and Lisa are telling the world. He builds a bridge between the very rich and the frontier spirit from which he came by being generous on purpose. People do these things because they truly believe that success isn't just measured in gold bars, but in lives changed for the better and traditions kept alive. As the seasons change again, Tony juggles his charitable duties with careful planning for the next gold season. As the winter solstice comes to an end, stories about dredges and equipment plans take their place. Work gloves are put back on hands that were just a few weeks ago steering him across infinity pools. In the spring, when the ice melts from the riverbeds, both dredges and charity campaigns go into overdrive. This is because Tony Beets was both a giant in placer mining and a steward of communities, balancing wealth and duty. Tony has built an empire that goes beyond the shine of gold through these private luxuries, family ties, and charitable work. He shows that real wealth is many things, like the roar of engines, the hush of knowing smiles, and the echo of lives changed. In the last part, we'll look at how Tony's public image, which is shaped by gold rush camera angles and edited highlights, both reflects and differs from this complex reality. We'll also look at the tension between what we see on TV and what we actually experience. People who know Tony best say that his real strength is in the private world he builds around family, tradition, and quiet generosity. Tony's public image is often based on huge dredges thundering through frozen riverbeds. Heavy machinery and custom garrets make up the forged metal facade, but Lisa Beets and I have a relationship that lasts longer than TV contracts and mining seasons. Lisa moved to Texas as a child, but she learned the Yukoner's rhythm years before the cameras even started rolling. This made their marriage a perfect mix of European poise and northern grit. As Tony's confidant, she oversees the complex tapestry of the household by making sure staff schedules are followed, reading press releases to protect the family's honor, and choosing social invitations that show both his status and their shared values. Lisa's touch makes sure that intentions are reflected in every gala tent and riverside retreat. She makes sure that sophistication is based on authenticity and opulence is tempered by purpose. Every Sunday morning, the whole Beets family gathers in the kitchen, which is lined with quartz. Tony flips the first dozen crepes, Bram and Sarah arrange fresh berries, and Lila reads from the family journal out loud. The sound of children running around and laughing blends in with the soft hum of the underfloor heating, which is very different from Tony's normal days, which are filled with the roar of engines. He gets strength from these simple moments for the hard work that lies ahead. But he is still very protective of their privacy. For example, when the production team wants to film bedtime routines or heated arguments between siblings, Lisa sets clear limits. Cameras can take pictures of groups of people with frost-covered windows in the background, but they can't record private conversations or tears shed over dredge delays. In this way, Tony strikes a balance between reality TV fame and real stewardship, protecting the sanctity of family life while using his fame to promote charitable causes and brand-building efforts. Tony's siblings are like the beating heart of the empire. Every spring, he holds a secret meeting in the hangar where brothers who question his sluice rules sit down with welders and hydraulic engineers to talk about tailings retention versus paystreak yield. Even though the arguments are heated, they end with a ritual where the patriarch gives the engraved pickaxe to the next generation. Tony extending the heirloom under fluorescent lights in a photograph that became a symbol of continuity and was used on both business letterheads and gala invitations. Brothers work on quiet projects when no one is looking, like changing the angles of sluice lines or testing new dredge motor bearings in the back bay of the hangar. These engineering experiments are part of family history, so every gold-producing invention is the result of a group's work, not just one person's success. Giving back to the community is another part of the Beets family's private compass. People from all walks of life attend the Gold for Good Gala every summer. It has formal auctions, crystal chandeliers, and is attended by dignitaries, tribal leaders, and government officials. Lisa and Tony look over grant applications by candlelight, choosing who gets scholarships for engineering and aviation degrees. They look over permafrost research proposals by hand to make sure that funds go to projects that are good for the environment. During the winter, semi-trucks carrying supplies for relief head to cabins in the middle of nowhere. This is a campaign that is run from the command desk in the hangar. While TV cameras show the spectacle of hot meals being delivered by floatplane, the Beets legacy is made up of the few hours that weren't filmed, when they unloaded crates and went to villages to help. These acts of service blur the line between lavish kindness and serious duty, showing a belief that money's real goal is to improve society. Putting private rituals and televised shows next to each other creates an interesting tension. Tony is shown on screen giving short orders and waving hydraulic wrenches around like scepters. Off-camera, they see him pat Sarah on the shoulder after a summer art show or pay close attention as Bram talks about a new plan for managing the tailings. These softer moments don't make it into the broadcast edit very often, but they have a much bigger impact on his personal brand. Welding sluice gates at -30 degrees Fahrenheit builds credibility, which keeps people interested. But the real currency of trust is the time spent mentoring family and strengthening community ties, which can't be seen. Lisa and Tony effectively control their media presence by what is said about these private interactions. They make sure that the headlines show both the roar of engines and the quiet of family devotion. At the turn of the calendar each fall, the Beets compound shifts its attention from charitable summits to winter preparations. Winter solstice storytelling retreats give way to frostline blueprints as Tony and his frontier cadre work under low-wattage industrial lamps to make plans for the next season. Even so, the sounds of family can still be felt during these slow months of planning and welding. While Sarah looks at topographical surveys on her laptop for new claims, Bram tweaks sluice riffles. Lila's dance practices are also case studies in ergonomics of balance and form, which Tony applies to the angles of sluice beds. Most fans don't see these interactions between different fields, but they make sure that technological advances come from group creativity rather than a single genius. As a result, the business has every shiny gold nugget bearing the mark of a shared vision and knowledge passed down from generation to generation. These private parts of Tony Beets' life, his relationship with Lisa, the caring routines he shares with his children, the technical friendships he shares with his siblings, and the charitable work he does without anyone knowing about it, support an empire that could easily become just a show. Tony keeps a level of authenticity that cameras alone can't fake by incorporating family ties and community service into every part of his lavish lifestyle. In the next section, we'll look at how his TV persona fits in with this complicated reality. We'll also look at how the editors of Gold Rush chose which stories to include and how myth-making and real life work together. Gold Rush shows Tony Beets as a harsh, almost mythical mining baron, wielding hydraulic wrenches like scepters and barking orders into a radio. However, it carefully cuts out the details that make him both relatable and deeply human. Cameras catch his deep voice as dredges churn icy rivers, but almost every kind dinner with Lisa, every quiet family story time by the granite hearth, and every tender moment of mentoring with Bram or Sarah is lost in the cut. There is a big difference between what people see on TV and what really happens behind the scenes. This is Tony's public persona versus his real life. The producers of Gold Rush focus the story on high-stakes engineering problems and explosive machinery breakdowns, which are meant to get more viewers, while leaving out the more emotional, relationship-based scenes. When each episode is made, the conflict is made stronger. The producers pick camera angles that make Tony's frown, his stifled answers, and his unwavering expectations stand out. The most dramatic lines are cut when there are disagreements during planning sessions, making him seem like a harsh taskmaster. Still, these scenes are cut together from hours of footage that were carefully framed to make the tension higher. On the other hand, moments of compromise are cut short, like when Tony listens carefully to a child's photography project or quietly supports an elderly person in the community who is feeling down. Because of this careful editing process, a public story is built on tension, mechanical spectacle, and a single, commanding presence. The edited persona goes beyond how people interact with each other and shows risk and reward in a very real way. When Tony is shown bringing in a record-breaking amount of gold, the scene will often cut to a cameo of celebratory scotch pours. It's as if money keeps going down without the long, hard hours of winterized dredge maintenance, the never-ending stakeholder negotiations, or the emotional toll of seasonal uncertainty. People may never see the late-night strategy calls he has with indigenous leaders, the careful safety checks he requires, or the private vows he makes with Lisa to protect their family's privacy. By showing only a small part of these decisions, Gold Rush reinforces a simple idea: Tony Beets is the unstoppable force. But even mythical figures need to be real to be believed. Behind the cameras, Tony and Lisa control the story in a subtle way by letting people see or not seeing certain scenes. Film crews are welcome at dredge summits, equipment tests, and gala fundraisers, but they are not allowed to film personal family events or business talks that could lower the dramatic tension or show private weaknesses. With this level of openness, the show stays on edge, full of mechanical suspense and tough determination, while still giving viewers a look at Tony's deeper commitments, such as his leadership of community scholarships, his fierce defense of family privacy, and his personal struggles with injury or equipment failure that don't fit neatly into an episode's climax. The conflict between myth and reality can be used to your advantage. On the one hand, by-the-book editing makes the kind of emotional TV that gets people to watch and brings in money from sponsors. On the other hand, Tony's kindness and mentoring offscreen create the goodwill that turns viewers into lifelong fans. People who learn about his work to help people during the winter or his open criticism of environmental policies often become brand ambassadors and share content that goes beyond what is shown on the show. The broadcast persona and the private benefactor work together like two engines. One keeps people's attention for a short time, and the other builds loyalty that lasts. This mix of mythology on TV and real-life experiences also affects Tony's business dealings. When he releases a limited edition line of merchandise, like a co-branded toolkit or a commemorative gold pan, it plays on the idea that he is a tough engineer that he shows on screen. But what really draws people in are the unscripted reviews and demos he posts on his private social channels, or he unboxes prototypes with family members, tests products honestly in the shop, and asks for direct feedback. Fans who find these unfiltered testimonials often trust them more than the polished commercials that are woven into Gold Rush. Finally, the editors of Gold Rush chose which stories to include in the book, which results in a strong, if incomplete, myth about a timeless pioneer who fights both natural and human obstacles. But people really connect with Tony's work when they make the connection between the myth and their own private reality. They see a man weld sluice gates in the morning and then quietly walks his daughter through dance recitals at night, a leader who negotiates big equipment leases and then negotiates scholarship terms for aspiring engineers, and a famous person who is in charge on TV but loves spending time with his family when the cameras aren't rolling. This complex tapestry, with its equal parts drama, depth, spectacle, and sincerity, shows why Tony Beets is still one of the most interesting people on reality TV.